So hey everyone, my name is Tanuj. So welcome to the course on Next.js 14. Alright, so this is the first video. So this will be going on from like for quite a while, where I'll be demonstrating you also with an application how exactly we need to use Next.js and what are the features and what the problems does Next.js solve when we compare to the traditional React. Okay, so let's get started with this amazing course. So it's not going to be like much with animation, so just please bear with the context and like what am I actually going to explain, okay, so that it can help you deliver some value. Okay, so let's first talk about what problems are we actually facing with the traditional React that we are keeping on using. Okay, so of course it gives us a very good developer experience where it has a lot of features like like the virtual DOM, like segregating your code into various components. It is an amazing developer experience. Also, we were able to access much of React's libraries because of its popularity when compared with the traditional JavaScript that we used to write, right, using JavaScript modules and all that. So of course it's a good developer experience. However, it also comes with its downsides, right? So all of these downsides, let me tell you that Next.js is able to solve it, and I'll also be showing you upcoming in the course how exactly like what actually is the problem, which I'm going to practically show you, and how exactly Next.js will be able to solve it. Okay, so the first problem is it has a slow initial render, which means that initially that React runs on the client side, and when in the client side, so the browser has to download all of the JavaScript files, and then we see the first paint on the screen, right? So initially it takes a little bit of time, and then it once it downloads all the JavaScript files, it will then be painted on the screen, and till then we see a blank screen. So that's not a good developer experience, sorry, good user experience, right? So that's the problem that we face. And apart from that, we see like some challenges in the SEO, right? Because once we see the source code of the React, the initial stage of React, we just see a div with an ID of root, right? In that ID itself, all of our JavaScript files that it downloaded will be mounted onto that, and then it will display on the screen. So this is actually called client side rendering. And how is it actually compared to server side rendering? We'll talk that in a moment. And as I told you, this renders only on the client side, and all of the, even though the page is static, it has to be served from the client side. And even though there is no interactivity, we are unnecessarily sending JavaScript files and then like downloading from the browser, which takes in a lot of time for that. Okay, so these are the major like cons of React, and also there are a few more, but these are the major ones. And I'll also show you what is the major difference between client side rendering and server side rendering. So far what React has actually been doing is only being rendered content on the client side and nothing from the server side. So that's where Next.js comes into play, where this is a framework of React which is actually developed by a company called Vercel, which is a deployment where you actually deploy your React apps, right? So that's the company which developed this. So this framework of Next.js supports both server-side rendering and client-side rendering. Okay, so I'll just come to it in a bit in a moment, because I'm going to explain you practically probably in the next video how exactly server-side rendered components differ from client-side components. Where I'll just give you a hint that we need to explicitly mention certain components that this is a client component, and only those components which have some kind of interactivity, right? We are going to render them on the client side than on the server side. Suppose, let's say we have a component, okay, which does not have any much interactivity. So why unnecessarily send them from the client side and make the page slow? So instead we can just send them directly from the server, and that's what actually Next.js serves, right? So we need to say that this component is a client component, and the other component which doesn't have interactivity as server component. So this is the main difference between that. And the third feature of Next.js is static site generation, which is nothing but pre-rendering. So all of your static content will be pre-rendered at build time, okay, so that whenever you navigate to another page, it will already be pre-fetched, okay, it will be pre-rendered, so that without even a second, it will just navigate you to the page without any loading sign or anything like that. Okay, so that is the third feature, that is called static site generation. And finally, this has file based 14. Usually we used to like in our traditional React app, we like employ some kind of libraries like React router DOM in order to create certain routes, and this everything is based on files. Okay, the file structure that you create within Next.js, so that itself will act as a router. Okay, so let's say I have a folder, so that will be the base one. So inside that I nest another folder, so that will be slash the name of that folder, and whatever the the page.jsx or tsx you give that, so that page will actually be rendered on that particular route. Okay, so this is just a hint. I'll be showing you practically more. So these are the major features in Next.js, and I'll be coming up with even more. So I just wanted to give a small overview of what is upcoming in this course. All right, so let's talk about these two things called client side rendering and server side rendering, which I've been talking in quite a while, right? So what is client side rendering? So you see the help of this chart. So let's assume that all of this is time distributed chart. Okay, so the first thing which it takes is to build the application and then serve it from the from our actual computer, the local machine, to the browser, right? So this is the time that it took. So initially it takes some time to build, and then it serves the static content, that the div with an ID of root, right? That just like you see in a React app. So this is the time that it takes, and then the rest of the time is to download the JavaScript bundle. Okay, so it has a file called bundle.js, which will actually be sent to the browser, which will download it, and then it will print out all of our code onto the browser source code and then display our content. Okay, so that is why like most of the time goes over here in the client. And as I told you, it has a slow initial renders because it takes time to build the whole application, and after that it's like seamless. And then it has a poor SEO, since we just all we see is the ID of div, and it is very difficult for search engines to grab the initial content. So that's what actually search engines initially see, right? The source code, what are the keywords, and if it just see that it's blank, it will understand that it is like nothing inside that. Okay, so that is a major challenge, and initially, as I told you, you will see a blank screen. Okay, so that's the actual client side rendering that is happening within our React app. And apart from that, like this makes pages interactive, because in server side, the content that it served is not interactive because there's no JavaScript. It's all about static content. But client side rendering contains JavaScript, and JavaScript is actually like responsible to make the pages interactive and make it actually work, right? So this is what makes it interactive. And once the initial paint is made onto the screen, then it fetches the data from the database, and then it re-renders with your content ready, right? So initially what we see is just like a static page without any data, and then it will fetch some, if it has any database, it will fetch data from there, and then it will re-render accordingly, right? So this is about client side rendering, and let us see the difference. How does it differ from server side rendering? Okay, so in server side rendering, you see that the build time is same as client side, but it takes some time from the client side, because we have some interactivity within our pages, right? For like the JavaScript files, and all of the static content, like whatever like components that we have are marked as server components, will all be fetched from the server than from the client. So this will not send any kind of JavaScript files, and it will purely be fetched from the server. Okay, so this all these components which are in the server will have no interactivity, but this will make your pages much faster, right? And the initial loading time will be much faster than than the client side. So this is the major difference between that. And as I marked over here, like HTML, CSS and all other static files are pre-rendered, which means that they are served from the server and rather from the client, right? So instead of like sending the JavaScript files, so by this we see some content on the screen, right? Instead of just a blank screen, we at least have some content to view. So this is actually a good developer experience, user experience, and also it has a better SEO. At least there is some content on our source code that Google can track our like page, and then it can see the data for search engine optimizations, right? So this is one thing. And also the JavaScript bundle sizes decrease. Let's say we have like 200 MB of JavaScript files. In that let's say like 130 or 150 components are static, which doesn't have much interactivity, which doesn't need JavaScript. So all of that is redundant, right? We don't need that interactivity anymore, so we can serve them from the server than from the client. And those components like which which are having interactivity, so that will be serving from the client side. And I'll also be demonstrating you, as I told you, that we need to mark certain components within our working directory as like this is a client component and others a server component, like that. Okay, so we'll be learning all of that in action. So once all of our static files are present in our web page, so it will then go ahead and make the hydration process. Okay, so hydration is actually a process which gives life to your website, right, which makes it interactable and by downloading the JavaScript file. So what it actually does is it will traverse your whole DOM tree, which is usually static content, and then add in event listeners all to those components that need interactivity, and makes the page interactive. And then like if it has any database queries subsequently, then it will go and make those database queries and then load it onto the screen. Okay, just like how the traditional React also does from the client side. Okay, so this is the major difference between server side rendering and client side rendering. So in a nutshell, these are all the features that we discussed about Next.js that stands out from the traditional React, and what are all the problems it solves. Okay, so we will be making a small application that is just like a notes app, where we can just write a note and we can just store it, and this will cover all the different features that Next.js uses. And you will also be practically having a look at how exactly to build websites using Next.js, right? So we will be using all of that in this notes app. Okay, so see you in there. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions regarding today's topic, you can just let me know in the comments. I'll just try to answer them. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.